We're here in the heart of the Mississippi Delta in a high production area right outside of Boyle, Mississippi. What we're looking at here is very common in the Mississippi Delta in that this is an irrigated twin row on a bedding system on 38 inches soybean production system. And this bean crop is roughly in the V1, some a little earlier than that in the VC stage. All right, usually about 10 to 14 days after soybeans are planted, the seedling begins to emerge. And soybeans are staged according to the number of nodes present up until reproductive development. Now in this case, what you see is soybean cotyledons, then a soybean unifoliate, followed by the next node will be a soybean trifoliate. When soybean emerges, upon emergence, it's considered the VE stage of growth. Up until this unifoliate is expanded, that is considered the VC stage of growth for V cotyledon, vegetative cotyledon. This trifoliate does not count until these leaf margins are unfolded, and at this point they are not, so this is still considered a VC soybean stage of growth. This soybean plant is actually in the V1 stage of growth. You can see that the trifoliate immediately above the unifoliate the leaf margins have unfolded, and so therefore that is the V1 stage of growth. At this stage of growth, I'm looking for several things. One is a uniform stand. This is a pretty adequate stand. I normally like to see anywhere between 100 to 130,000 emerged plants. We can achieve maximum yield slightly below that if we maintain it weed-free, but ideal situations would be in that 100 to 120,000 final plants per acre for maximum yield. Another thing I look at in this growth stage is I look for any signals, signs of disease, light yellow in the terminal, any signs of insect pressure like thrips or bean leaf beetle feeding. I don't see any of that. With the threat of Roundup resistant palmer pigweed, ryegrass, those sorts of pests, we are seeing increased use of residual herbicides. And then also a post-emergence application of said residual herbicides. If you look closely at this V1 plant, you'll see a lot of cupping of this trifoliate. That is indicative of a chloroacetamide type damage on soybeans. And also on these unifoliates, you can see speckling, very common to something like a PPO herbicide. Very common to see those type chemistries applied as a burn down and soybeans to emerge through that, show some transient symptoms, and then grow out of it. The point I want to emphasize here is that if you are showing symptoms of herbicide injury and at a very young stage in indeterminate soybean growth, we do not like to see a second post-emergence application of any sort of chemistries over the top of this, as we will shave some bushels off the top in a high input system. Some situations you get into, you don't have a choice, but if it is not warranted based on weed pressure, allow these soybean plants to grow out of this injury before you make a second post-emergence application. Regardless of what you hear many individuals say out in the field, it is always of utmost importance to read and follow your label.